What's up, everybody? This is, of course, your favorite Shogun here, Sugi, and today I'm gonna be finally reviewing Stone Ocean Part 3. Now, there will be some heavy spoilers included on this review, so you have been warned. Now, apologies for this review coming late, and I partially blame Netflix, because sometimes they get rights to these amazing movies, TV shows, and anime, but they do absolutely horrible promotion, because they have too much catalog coming into their platform, so they don't have all the resources and time to promote all of the shows that come out. And when I open out the application on my phone or my PlayStation, I don't get a pop out, oh, by the way, this show that you have already watched is getting a new season at this and this time. Nor did I get a notification on my phone or an email, and this is sometimes a bit of a problem with the Netflix platform, that they have just too much content and they don't get promoted sometimes as well as they should have. Good example being Dark Crystal, which was an amazing show, but Netflix done absolutely poor promotion on that show, in my opinion. If they did a bit better promotion, it probably would have been renewed for another season. Now, let's get into Stone Ocean Part 3. Now, first and foremost, what it was new is obviously a new opening song. The ED is the same, and I have to say that this new opening song in Part 3 is probably the best out of the three. It feels a very JoJo-ish type of a track, it has the same type of energy and vibes, and I definitely, enjoyed it. In terms of the rest of the OST, it's basically the same stuff that we heard already in part 1 and 2, which I already said, it's there, it does its job, nothing too extraordinary though. Now, something that I argued with another person on the part 2 review that I did, where I said in that review that yeah, the story could have been just wrapped up after they exited from the prison and then just straight up jump into the fight with the priest, right? And then, voila, we have a conclusion. And we don't have to spread out this goddamn story for longer than it has to be. Stardust Crusaders was a good example of a very overstretched story, which to me felt very unnecessary. And this was the very same thing like the Sons of Dio. These fights had basically no big meaning in the grand plot at all. They just were random, monster of the week encounters, and they had really no impact on the character developments and anything like that for the protagonists or the villain itself. And that was a good example that I just didn't enjoy. But the fairy tale, stand was kind of interesting, and I did like that, but I still felt that in terms of the whole plot and the story, it didn't really have a lot of value. And this is not just these things, but also the backstory of Pucci, which kind of gets explored in part 3. I guess you want to know a bit about the villains, and they did this in Golden Wind, but fundamentally it didn't change my opinion about the Golden Wind's villain boss. He was a dumbass villain, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. And this is the same thing that kind of happens here, that I don't really care about the priest. I don't think is fundamentally that interesting of a villain. His reasonings, why he's doing things like the great, it's the fate does this, fate does that, is not super interesting, because it's not even explored from a Christian fundamentalist type of way, which could have been a bit more interesting background story. But why do you introduce a Christian character which is not even remotely Christian or doesn't talk about Christianity? I guess he's a different type of priest, I guess, but that was okay, whatever. And then we had all of this weather report being basically his brother. Now, I think that was totally written off later on. It's not like Araki, initially when he conceived that character, that he was going to be the secret brother here. I don't think that was something that he was actually thinking. He's kind of writing the story as it goes, in my opinion. I think that's very apparent from all of these seasons. And, if we had removed that story arc, them being brothers, wouldn't have changed anything about the whole plot. It wouldn't have increased the stakes or the reasonings. Weather Report still had a bit of a revenge, and he could have just followed Jolyne to fight against the priest. That would have been enough of a reasoning. Imperio, he had a bit of I guess a bit of a revenge story with the priest, but like he also didn't have like this massive reasoning to basically, you know, join them and help them to basically defeat the big bad guy. So this like brotherly, you know, bond here and the reasonings behind that backstory and everything, like I think it was totally useless. It didn't really play anything into it, and I felt like at least the priest could have like had a goal to basically resurrect his sister. But even that didn't seem to be his goals at any point. Like, I was thinking, like, he would say something about his sister towards the very last episodes or something, but no zero mentions, as if it never was part of the story, which, once again, I think, you know, it probably wasn't. Like, this was just a random background story that they wanted to add out to the main villain to flush him out a bit more. And flushing out characters, especially villains, is important. But if it's like, you know, very surface level shit that doesn't matter at all, then, you know, it doesn't matter, okay? So that was a problematic. So yes, I think this could have been 29 episode anime. Like, you could have condensed all the fucking filler shit out from these last 13 episodes. You remove 10 episodes and then just straight up go into the last battle. Maybe you could have changed a bit of things, the end of part 2 as well, to you know, mix it out and didn't feel like very rushed out. But I felt like there was so much filler shit here that didn't really have anything to do with the grand plot. But, you know, if people just want to see cool fights, I guess that's okay. And everybody has their own reasons to watch anime. Like, do I watch it for this and why watch it for that? But for me, I'm always a story first type of a guy, and this did nothing for the story. Now, in terms of the animation quality, it has been good and consistent over all the 3 parts. You have a bit of 3D animation obviously used because there's a lot of gravity-based stuff, and, you know, well, you know, you need to do a lot of, like, you know, cars falling around and stuff like that. And, you know, I think those looked good and don't have any problems with it. I think it's much more like, I don't think any studio at this point is like 2D drawing cars anymore. Like, everything is 3D, and then you have like 2D, you know, drawn on top of them or something that I've noticed. Now let's finally talk about a bit of the ending, because that's where probably the most juice is about, and that's kind of my final point about this review. So what I've gathered, Araki allegedly, to his own words, became to a creative end, and he decided that the part 7, Stone Ocean, basically this is the 6th part, becomes sort of like you have this world reset, so the story is rewinded again to the ability of the priest, and now the story, you know, starts out again, but in a different dimension, a bit of a different like setting and everything. And that sometimes is not like a horrible idea. Like, it's better than time traveling. I mean, it's something that we'll talk about on this channel soon as well. But I thought it was a good way to do it, but like, you know, it's interesting, like, why he would do that. Like, the story that is in parts 7 and 8 could have existed even without the time reset, based on what I know about them, like the little tidbits that I've, you know, read about them. Now, I have to say that the last fight between the priest and the Emporio was really lame. It was not really like a high stakes fights, and sometimes, you know, the best fights are not exactly the last in many of the anime, and that's totally fine. But maybe I would have wanted to see Jolyne to basically you know, fuck up the priest instead of Emporio, but whatever. That was okay. But I did like the ending here, where this new timeline, Emporio gets thrown into this new universe, and where he's meeting all of these characters again, which don't seem to have any stance whatsoever, and they're just there to you know, live their new mundane life, and they're a bit changed out, and some of their names are even different. I thought that was actually a pretty good ending. I have always said that endings are a bit harder to do than, you know, most people think. And this time also, like, we didn't have to technically we didn't have to kill out half of the main cast in order to get like a proper conclusion or anything. So this time around, like in Golden Wind, they killed half the characters. In Diamond and Unbreakable, I think they actually killed only 2 in that one. So, but like, I thought the end was good, and, you know, with a happy ending, great conclusion. Maybe I would have wanted to see, you know, Jolyne's father once more in like a different setting or whatever. But hey, we're getting obviously part 7 next, and that has been heralded as one of the best things. But I have to say, once again, I don't think Araki isn't necessarily a great story writer. He might be great at doing scenes and certain dialogue, but like the big picture stuff, I think he struggles a bit too much, and he's kind of molded into this very archaic, episodic Monster of the Week format, which is not really good. That's why I always said I liked Phantom Blood a lot, because there was some type of ongoing story, and there was more about focusing on the characters, perhaps, instead of like drawing a random villain at each new episode, which doesn't get any build up whatsoever. They just appear and then they die shortly after. And you know, that's something that maybe he should change. Like, he has changed the settings on each of these things, like this take on prison, but he just constantly wants to go through this weekly Monster of the Week format still, and that's the thing I would like him to see change, which I don't think will happen, because I guess the formula is working and that's the way he's like used to doing things. But there are much more different ways to tell the story than that format, which I'm not a very fond of. Some people like it and some people don't. But I'm gonna wrap it up here. I thought part, Stone Ocean altogether, was decent. I think it might be even better than part 5 and 4 in a lot of ways, but I did think that this was probably the most stretched out of the all parts, alongside with Stardust, because that one was way too long. But yeah, that's my take on it. If you have any differing opinions, I would love to hear them in the comment section below.